Today's recipe calls for some ground beef. I'm going to show you how to make a really easy meal prep, also known as beef rice and broccoli. It's super simple and very effective and delicious. So with that said, let's get started.
The first component of this easy meal prep we need to start with is the carb portion, which is 1 cup or 213 grams of a good quality long grain Thai jasmine rice. Snag a medium-sized holding apparatus, transfer the rice to the holder. After the grains have been placed in the bowl, add some water to the holding device. Should be enough water to fully submerge the rice in the liquid. Give the grains a shakedown for a few minutes. The goal is to wash off as much excess rice starch as possible. After a couple of minutes, you'll notice the water has become super cloudy and milky looking. Pour off all the cloudy water. Do your best not to lose any grains. Once you've managed not to lose any, repeat the same process with fresh water. You'll wash the rice a total of 2 times. This will ensure we get as much of that starch off as possible. This step will help give us the perfect rice, meaning it will be fluffy and tender in texture. Now that it's squeaky clean, grab a fine mesh strainer and drain the rice. Drain all or as much of the water off as possible. We do not want to add any of the starchy water to our pot when we cook. It could throw off the entire cooking process. I find it helps if you lightly shake and kind of gently toss the rice in the strainer. This will help get rid of more water. Grab a pot that has a nice thick bottom and will also be perfect in size. We want something that will allow the rice to double in size once it's been cooked. Picking too large of a pot and the rice won't be submerged in the water, preventing it from getting a proper cook. Measure out 1 1/4 cups or 300 mils of cold water. You may have to squint really hard to ensure you achieve the proper measurement. Grab the H2O and the uncooked grains. Place the pot over the heating source. Add the water to the pot, then give it a little shake to ensure all the rice is in one nice even layer and is completely submerged. Crank the heat up to a medium-high heat. We'll leave it on this ripping high heat until the water hits a simmer, meaning it's barely starting to bubble. Once it has reached the light bubble stage, toss a lid atop of the pot. You want to use a lid that has a tight, snug fit to it. This will help keep the heat and steam in for that proper cook. When you're done playing Goldilocks and have the proper lid, turn your heat to a really low temp, then set a timer to cook the rice on this low temp for 15 to 20 minutes, or until the rice has doubled in size, is fluffy looking, and is tender in texture. While it's cooking, don't mess with the pot. Also, leave the lid on and do not take it off for that quick peek. Be patient, trust the process, and wait for the timer. Once you hear the buzzer go off, it's time to check on the rice. It should look pillowy and light. All the liquid should have been completely cooked off as well. You can check this by grabbing a rubber spat and getting it between the rice and the pan. If the bottom is dry, you know it's done. Cook it an additional few minutes if needed. When it's done, take it off the heat source with the lid still attached to it. We want to allow the rice to steam and rest for 10 to 15 minutes before we mess with it. After the resting period is over, gently fluff the rice to break it up from the large hunk of grains it is. Following that, grab a half sheet tray so we can toss all the rice onto the tray. Make it into one nice even layer. Set it aside to allow it to completely cool down. Now we can move on to the veggie portion of the meal prep, which is 12 ounces or 340 grams worth of little trees known as broccoli. I cheated and bought a bag of broccoli florets instead of broccoli crowns. This will make it much easier and faster to make our meal prep. It'll also help make tracking the macros a bit easier as well. I suggest going through the florets and cutting the larger pieces in half or into any size you prefer for your eating experience. It'll give us a higher yield and you won't have to dislocate your jaw just to eat some veggies. Once you've cut things into your desired size, grab a large stock pot. Fill it up about halfway with some warm tap water. After the holder is holding the water, add a few fat pinches of coarse ground kosher salt. The salt will season the broth as it is cooking. Next, grab a large bowl so we can set up an ice bath. I'll explain more about this later. Toss in a few good scoops of frozen liquid, then add enough water so that when the cooked broccoli is added to it, it will be submerged in the frigid water. You may have to add a little bit more ice like I did. After you have everything set up, take all the goods over to the cooking device. Toss the pot over a heating element and crank the heat to high. We need to bring the pot of water up to a boil. Pro tip, toss a lid atop of the pot to bring it up to a rolling boil faster. Once your water is bubbling angrily, drop in half of the veg. Give everything a quick dunk in the hot water. We want to do this in 2 sets to ensure we achieve a proper cook on all of our broccoli. Set a timer to cook the brock for 3 minutes or until it becomes a bright green color and is tender in texture. We want something that will be al dente, so almost all the way cooked through, but still has a little bit of crunch to it. This is the only way to eat your veggies. If not, they become soggy and gross. That's probably why most people don't like vegetables. Anyways, once the buzzer rings, pull a few pieces out of the hot tub and check them with a fork. The fork should pierce the broccoli with little to no effort. If this occurs, it's done. If not, cook for another minute or 2. Using a spider or a slotted spoon, scoop the broccoli up and gently shake off as much water as possible. Transfer the cooked veg over to the ice bath to shock it. Ensure that you fully submerge it into the cold water. We do this step because it will stop the broccoli from carryover cooking and becoming mushy. So it'll lock in that bright color and the perfect texture we work so hard for. Repeat the same steps for the remaining uncooked green stuff. After everything has been cooked, allow the broccoli to hang out in the ice bath for a minute or 2, or until everything is cold to the touch. We do not want the veg hanging out in the water for too long because it will start to absorb the water, causing it to become waterlogged, throwing off the texture. Once everything is chilly, strain and drain the goods. Shake off as much water as you can, then toss it onto a half tray that has a clean kitchen towel on it. The towel is there to help soak up any excess water we couldn't shake off. Pat dry the veg to also help get any of the water that is present. Do your best to soak up as much water as possible. Once you feel good about your pat down, set the stuff aside so we can move on to the last thing of the meal prep, which is the protein portion of 93.7 ground beef. We'll use 1 pound, 2 ounces, or 500 grams worth of this stuff. Next, we need to make a spice blend because the meal prep doesn't need to be boring tasting. Use your favorite spices for this or follow my go-to mix. Snag a small container and start by adding 1 tablespoon granulated garlic, 1 tablespoon granulated onion, 1 tablespoon granulated onion, half a teaspoon cumin, a 1/4 teaspoon chili powder, a 1/4 teaspoon cayenne pepper. Mix all the spices into one dusty mess. Give it a taste test and adjust the flavor profile as needed. When you have that made, grab a large saute pan or skillet and some coarse ground kosher salt. Wrangle everything up and take it over to your stovetop. Toss the pan on your heat source. Crank the heat to a medium-high level of hotness. Allow the pan to become ripping hot. Once it's all hot and bothered, give the pan a light spray with some type of cooking oil. I used avocado oil. After it's been greased up, dump your ground beef in. Break it up from the large hunk of meats it is so that the entire bottom of the pan is covered in beef. Make it hail a few fat pinches of coarse ground kosher salt, then dust the meats with half of your spice mix. Allow the first side to cook for around 4 to 5 minutes or until it has a nice brown sear on it. To check, simply flip over a small portion to give it the old looky-loo to see what's going on. Once you've achieved some good color, flip everything over with a pancake turner, also known as a spatula. Cook this side for an additional 4 to 5 minutes for a total time of 8 to 10 minutes or until it has been cooked all the way through. To check the doneness, break open a piece. If you don't see any pink, then it's done. When it's done cooking, use a wooden spoon or some kind of other tool to break up the meat into smaller pieces. Following that, add the rest of your spice blend in, then give it a mixer. It's imperative to not overcook the beef because it's so lean it'll dry out a lot faster since it does not contain very much fat. After you've achieved the perfect cook, transfer the beefy goodness over to a half tray to allow it to completely cool down. Allow all the goods to cool before we portion and put it away. Now would be a good time to collect your storage containers. I like using these reusable vacuum sealed bags, makes it easier to freeze and store. When you have your holding devices figured out, divide all the ingredients into equal portions. I believe the easiest way to accomplish this task is using a kitchen scale. It makes things faster and a lot more accurate. After you're done playing with your food, pop the lids atop of your containers or vacuum seal shut your bags. Eat these meals with your favorite low-calorie teriyaki sauce or add some hot sauce instead. Whatever you decide to do, just enjoy.
All right, now that our meal prep meal is done, let's give it the old taste-a-roo. So looking at it, it came out super aesthetically pleasing. The broccoli is nice and bright and green. The rice looks fluffy and tender. The beef got that sweet caramelization on it. Overall, the meal looks complete and it looks like it's gonna be healthy and tasty. So let's give it a shot. Start with the rice, which we already know it's gonna be good. It's nice and fluffy and tender and it has that sweet, delicious jasmine rice flavor to it. Now let's try the broccoli. Next, let's try our beef. Our broccoli came out really good. It has that distinct broccoli flavor to it. And if healthy was a flavor, it would be this stuff. And it brings that pop of that fresh veggie to our meal prep, which is really nice and makes you feel nice and healthy on the inside. As for our beef, it came out super dank tasty. It has that nice beefy flavor to it, and that caramelization that we got on the outside brings a ton of goodness to the table. The spice mix takes it from a boring beef all the way to that max level of deliciousness with that onion and garlic and a little bit of spiciness. Overall, everything works so well together, and this stuff is super good. This meal prep meal is really simple to slap together, and you can pretty much make it any which way you want. Maybe add your favorite low-calorie barbecue sauce or a hot sauce or any of your other favorite sauces, or make it extra bougie and get rid of the boring boiled broccoli and do a roasted broccoli, which sounds super tasty. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna go be unhealthy and go eat some pizza, so we'll see you on the next one. Looks like it's gonna be super, like you say. Well, if brings that pop of freshness, and the rice looks fluffy. Fresh brings that freshness.